What's going on, everybody? It is Tuesday, December 26th, and you are watching and listening to the Daily AI Show. We have with us, no, that's our, hey, here we go. We have with us Andy, and I am Beth, and we think maybe Carl will come at some point. But we are talking about websites today, and specifically what is happening in business and the way that people are using AI that poses a major risk to websites, right? Or if you saw the splash screen says 0 views, right? And there are a bunch of case studies that we're seeing play out more and more about people documenting the loss of visitors to their websites and what that does to their business model. And Jen Swartz says, happy Boxing Day. Thank you very much, Jen. So yes, happy day after Christmas for everybody in the US. And for those of you who celebrate Boxing Day, happy Boxing Day. Great. Andy, what are your thoughts about websites and the risk?
So, companies spend a lot of time and attention on SEO, search engine optimization. Why? Because SEO is essential to pleasing the robots. So there's robots that crawl all the websites on the web. And every major search engine has these independent crawlers that go out and collect that information. And then in history, the purpose of that is to present on the SERP, the search engine results page, the listing of the most relevant websites for the query that you put in. And that's driven by keywords. SEO has a lot to do with making sure that there's density of keywords that are relevant to the ones you want to rank for, and so on. And then people would see the list and they would, you're struggling to make it onto the first page of search engine results. The top listings are the ones that are either sponsored, or so you had to pay to play, or they are the ones that have the most authority by the PageRank algorithm in the case of Google, or other methodologies that are used to figure out which are the relevant sites to put in front of, what link should I put in front of this user who's asked this question to the search engine. But I think that in the future, websites are going to be just as essential, but they're going to be for robots primarily.
Right.
They're not going to be for the purpose of you greeting and receiving customers in the same volume that has happened historically, because many users will be using assistants that are powered by AI that will collect the necessary information from your website, just like a crawler collects all that information today. So you'll have your own crawler, and that own crawler will basically satisfy most of what you want to do with that website. So the challenge now is, what can we do? What can we put on a website that could be, in effect, advertised by your assistant or your crawlers, if you're still using a search engine, to look around, in order to encourage engagement with the website directly. So, we can, I think this discussion today will be a lot of ideation about what does that look like to create engaging, personalized experiences on the website that are, appealing enough that people will navigate via links, but or at the behest of your assistant, to actually go and visit the website yourself in person.
Right. So I did a search on Perplexity. Andy's a big fan of Perplexity, and we did a show on Perplexity a couple of weeks ago, or a couple of days ago. Sorry, time. What is time? And what it gave me was 5 main purposes that businesses use for websites. The first is generating revenue, so you can sell things on your website. And I don't see that specifically being impacted by AI, in that I don't think AI is selling your services to people, right? You need people on your website to sell your services, but AI is not making a play to be able to do that necessarily. But the next 4, providing information, building credibility and trust, global reach and accessibility, and marketing and branding. Those are potentially all things that are going to come through AI for people to get to you, and potentially be something that people can get from AI and not come to you, right? And that's where now we need to think or ideate a little bit about why, if I can get the information I need from an AI, from either a Bard or a Perplexity or a Google search generative experience, SGE, why am I going to somebody's website? I'm generally going to somebody's website to find out, to read their about us, to get a little bit more information about that. And also, if there's some kind of very specific, I want to know, like I want to know how to donate to Andy's nonprofit. That's probably something I'm going directly to Andy's website to find, versus trying to get that information from somewhere else. Yeah.
Yeah. So, when you break down the purposes of searches, navigation on the web is really what that's about. Some of them are transactional, like you have a purpose in mind to find and buy something, and that can be done by an assistant. There's no doubt about that. But I think for a long time to come, you'll want to go and generate some confidence that the place you're buying from and the product that you're buying are indeed going to fit your expectations. And that will require some deeper navigation than just allowing the surface experience of something like search generative experience enabled with Google Shopping, right? They'll couple those together eventually, so that you can, just as you can on Amazon, you can do a search, and you can just say buy now, and that'll all shortcut. But basically, what we're talking about here is a process called disintermediation. There are a lot of people who are going to be disintermediated by the incredible capabilities of AI assistants. And now we have AI assistants in effect that are still parked within the browser, and we're accessing them via ChatGPT or others. Eventually, you'll have one on your phone that is your personal assistant and can do all of these actions for you, and learns enough about you over time that your eyeballs are unlikely to go visit a company's website, or less likely, I should say, not unlikely, but less likely, unless you just enjoy that. If you enjoy browsing, then you might well browse the internet.
The other thing that I remember when we were prepping for the show and talking about what we might talk about in the show, the old model of getting to the front page of a Google or something, right? The old model of establishing yourself as an authority involved a ton of writing, right? So you write a bunch of articles based on a particular topic. Then that became something that, like, you could pay Jasper or pay actual people kind of pennies or low amounts of money to generate that kind of information. But it still took a fair amount of time to go out and do the web research of like what your competitor is talking about, and then engage in some sort of writing activity, and then engage in some sort of publishing activity. And one of the stories that led to this show was somebody who did that in about an hour. Right. So the crawling of the web, you can literally say, these are my 3 competitors, go and identify, like, gobble everything from their sites. Not necessarily ethical, but like research, right? And then have that analyzed, and then feed that to an AI that's going to turn out 800-word blog posts or newsletter posts or like information articles that you're going to put on your site. And you can do all of that in a tiny amount of time. And the reason that this made a big story was that the person or the business that did this took their competitors' traffic. Basically, they were watching that this other site was considered the like epitome of information. And by doing this process and not actually copying their articles weren't identical, they were just new articles written about the topics that people were interested in on this other site. And it was possible to pull and take revenue. So that's an old-fashioned technique, right? Like, look at what people are looking at your competitors and then give them that on your site. The shift that AI brought to it was how quick it was, how little human time involvement needed to be part of that process.
Yeah. So I'm the back of my head is trying to conjure up some ideas around, what the world would look like for those websites that can actually create an engaging experience that will attract, live sessions with a prospect.
Right.
And I think that has, so I'm thinking in the context now of longer lead time sales processes where there's a very, very deep examination that has to happen about what the configuration is of let's call it an advanced software product for an enterprise. Like, what's the configuration? There's lots of details that have to be understood. What's the implementation cost? What are all the, integration points that are going to happen in order to implement this in our company? And so there's research that has to be done that the assistant may not be able to do or won't be able to provide as well as an expert sales engineer would within that company. So I've had great experiences with sales engineers. I love that title because it's somebody who's not just in sales. They're not just doing lead capture and trying to get me into a phone conversation with a salesperson. They're actual engineers who understand their product very deeply, but they're in the mode of trying to help you understand their product and ensure that there's a real fit. And then they're going to turn you over. Generally, I think my experience is I never got to the sales engineer until I went through all the salespeople. But the sales engineer role, I think, is a really important one that can be implemented by AI.
Interesting.
And could lead up to a live sales call so that salespeople don't get disintermediated as well. So the engagement has to go. So now I mentioned, so I go to G2 Crowd and I say, look, I want this kind of software, and it gives me a list of 4 or 5 and it says, here's a link to the website. Or I do a search on Google and the search generative experience says, oh, this website offers a configuration experience with an AI sales engineer. Now, I would find that appealing. So I'm going to go in and just see if I run into any roadblocks through that sales engineer dialogue that would say, nah, this one's really not going to work for me. So I'd love to believe that there are going to be invitations by websites with capability built into the website that's going to invite you to come to the website in order to really more deeply explore questions and answers that you wouldn't get just from the crawler.
Right. And we've talked a little bit about this. I'm really interested in the ways that AI can just in time create the kind of experience you might be having if you were speaking to the exact right person in the exact right moment. And part of why AI can do that is because AI can simultaneously have all of that information in a way that, like, the sales engineer and the salesperson probably don't have a ton of overlapping knowledge, right? They have specific functions they need to perform, but an AI can have all of that knowledge and perform both functions. And you're making me wonder if, in fact, what gets spun up, what we see at some point in 2024, is websites that build themselves for the person who is there looking.
Yeah.
Right. So you've probably gotten the lead from somewhere else, either on LinkedIn or through a chatbot search, or somehow you've figured out that this is a company that you want to know more about their services or their products or that sort of thing. And again, like, this sort of exists. You go to the thing and the chatbot says, "Hey, can I answer some questions for you?" But what could it mean if you want to talk to the sales engineer and you say, and instead of saying something like, "Hey, can I answer some questions for you?" "Hey, I can take on the persona of a bunch of people who work here. And I'd love to have a quick conversation with you to see what kind of information you're looking for, and then see how we can deliver it to you." Right?
Yeah.
And your questions are, you know, the specs of the current system and you need it to bridge, or your CEO, you were the CEO, but your CEO has given you this task for 2024. And so now you're looking for a system. So you have an end goal in mind. That's the way you want to start having this conversation.
Yeah.
Other people have, like, these tech things in mind, and that's what they want to start having the conversation. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think product sites, e-commerce sites are going to be, relatively speaking, less affected than sales sites, where, the selling information is now going to be the visit that is required to ingest that sales information is going to be disintermediated by the assistants. But I think that there's an opportunity to shift toward a more educational format, so that you, in order to assert your authority as a company and as a website, you'll want to be really, really well informed, not only about your own product, but about your marketplace, and equipped to give a real primer to the visitor on what it is that is strategic about your company. So here's my market space. Here's my landscape of competitors. I'm going to share with you our view of how we differentiate from the competitors, and so on. So that there's a tutor around, this market that we represent, that's going to be engageable on the website. But now this implies, a new level of sophistication in website development, right?
Yep.
The functions and features on a website that you look at today are rudimentary by comparison to what we're describing, but all of these things will be enabled by AI coding capabilities. So you can basically have a dialogue with your website developer assistant, and it will say, "Okay, well, for this next quarter, we want to be able to do this to modify both the knowledge base, the content, and the interaction design that we've developed for our visitors who are coming to learn everything they need to know about our market."
Right. So we have a comment from LinkedIn user, says, "Hey, Andy." So it's coming. It's one of your folks.
I looked who it is. We have to go look on LinkedIn. That's Hope Wills. Hi, Hope. Nice to see you again.
Hope. She's been using ChatGPT way more than Google. Andy, what was the last website you went to that was like a business website?
Well, I've gone to a lot for AI, of course.
right?
So, I'm definitely we're drinking from the fire hose of new AI products that come out. And one of the things that you need to do is understand from the company's new entry perspective, what is it that they offer that where do they fit in the pantheon of AI products and services? And what is it that they're going to be able to do that's different from what's been available before? So I look at a lot of AI websites. I definitely
Mm,
go there because we're still not quite yet at the point where SGE or Perplexity even, really can frame that in as quickly as you can by scrolling through the front page of the website.
right.
Unfortunately, most of these websites are pretty spare, right? It's just a single scrolling page. You can drill in. There's a footer where you can go and look at, FAQs and all that other sort of thing. But they're basically trying to pitch what the product offering is for that AI service right from there, and to get you to try it
Hmm.
from the website.
Hmm. So one of the things that I'm wondering, well, similar, right? So I go to Perplexity a bunch so that I can use Perplexity, and then Perplexity sends me to websites in the same way that Google does or used to, but Perplexity is giving me a little bit more assurance that it will be what I asked for, and it isn't based on somebody paying so that they can get
Yeah,
my
so
eyeballs.
the term of art there is, instead of showing a paid link or a link for the purposes of generating traffic, they're just citing a source.
Right,
That's
right,
their parlance. This is a very academic approach that Perplexity takes, and you do get the list of sources for what is generated by Perplexity as an answer to your inquiry.
right,
They're presented right there. And so I have found myself quite often, if there's just not quite enough depth in the highly
right,
summarized thing there, I'm going to say, okay, that source sounds like it's on target with what I'm asking, and I'll click through to the source. And so I'm
right.
going to a website, and it's acting, as you say, Beth, very much like Google does today, which is giving you a link, a set of links to sites that can answer your question.
Right, right. So the next thing that goes back to what you were talking about earlier, are we in the future developing websites for even more for crawlers or agents or things that are not human eyeballs, right? So if I think about what things are capable of, you could have a ton more images that are tiny and not shown, right? Like
Yeah.
the systems are able to process visual information and down to a more minute level, right?
Yeah.
Particularly if that's digitized, right? If it's vector, it's not even processing it as a visual. Maybe even if it's pixelated, it's not processing it as a visual in the same way that we would. So I wonder if websites become actually bigger because they have a bunch more content in them, but most of that is not accessible to the search, the thing that is going and getting information. To a certain extent, that exists now, in that a bunch of what's embedded in the website are scripts or functions that are not a part of what people interact with, right? Like you're not seeing the script that is running,
Mhm.
you're seeing the result of the script that is running. And that script is either embedded on that page or linked somewhere else where it's calling that information
That's a very interesting point you're making, that the size of an image that has a lot of information in it doesn't have to be so big that it can be seen by you on a screen. It
right.
can be much more compressed. So there's a capacity for ingestion by the AI assistant of a large volume of visuals. And it lends to this thought: what's the purpose of video, which is so important in websites today? if humans are not the primary consumer of the website.
Oh, because videos are just a sequence of screens.
Yeah. Excuse me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, I'm just going to sit here for a second and have my mind blown by that. Particularly because like, where is Junmi? Junmi is with family. But we need you now. I hope your ears are burning. Because video is frames per second, right? Like that's how it's created. And 30 frames per second is kind of typical in this kind of stuff that is put on a website. I think
Yeah.
high def ends up being more byte intensive, has more content that it's delivering within the frame, and I think probably the frames per second may go up as well. But is video then just being consumed as individual sequence of frames? And often with video, like, you have keyframes, right? So there's a series of frames that is just looking at my hands pulling apart. So that's not actually really important information for for what we're talking about,
Yeah.
like, you're not going to pull, that's not going to give you information that you're going to need as an AI creating a content, creating a series of content based on what you're getting from a website. That's not super
So,
important.
it may be that, just as today, I now tend to want to go look at the transcript of a YouTube rather
Right.
than, and maybe even copy the transcript and have AI just summarize it for me so I don't have to watch an hour-long YouTube. Maybe the future of video will be that you present the video for the human visitors. Imagining that maybe when you arrive at a website, you basically announce yourself, by some selection on the page that you're a live visitor, and this, fireworks go off. Yay! Welcome! Really glad you came. Here's your discount code. But the video will need to have a transcript associated with it that can be read
Right.
by the robots, and then in addition, it may want to have what amounts to like a slideshow of the important graphics that are a part of that, where there's
Mhm.
denser information than just a talking head.
Right.
So the combination of those two would make that information more accessible to the robot crawlers that are ingesting and digesting that information for people as an AI assistant.
Right. Right. And the other thing about this is, how do you format it for your robot crawlers? So you create a CSV file or a text file. Do you create a JSON? These are tech terms, um, that basically are a TXT file. A text file is just like no formatting. A CSV file has comma separated values. That's what CSV stands for. So
Like a
you
spreadsheet.
can, right. So you can put information, you can mark it as like, this is the name, this is the title, this is the description, right? So it's a nice formatted way for machines to be able to take in information. JSON does that too, and takes it a little bit of a step further. So is information then, like, are we putting all of this information together, but the branding isn't about what a human would prefer in terms of what they're seeing?
Yeah,
Is it
what's
now
the
we're doing it for the
importance of a
machines?
logo? Like,
Right.
logos are really important to conveying the accumulated brand equity that is basically a function of the experience of the user with interactions with that logo. Maybe it becomes even more important because your assistant's going to present the logo along with its summary and
Right.
say, here's this company, and here's and that's a lot different than today, where you don't really see that. And so there's going to be changes to the way that information gets presented, because we're we're changing the wiring of the entire web experience by the inclusion of these automated assistants.
Right.
Who are, taking over a lot of the investment in time that's required by you as an individual human to pay attention to various websites. The days of, spending an hour browsing around to try to figure out what, you need to know are probably gone. That's
Right.
the acceleration that you're talking about.
Right.
But I think that there's going to be a need for you to think deeply about the website and how you can make it more educational, informational, like elevate the information that you really want to be presented, and the sort of the unique selling propositions that you have,
Right.
and the differentiation that you have, and make sure that those are being presented by Search Generative Experience in Google today, and its correlate in Bing search as well, and also Perplexity. I think Perplexity stands a good chance of, being a major player in the search engine market.
Right. I think so too. And how lovely that, they were just academics looking to get what they wanted, which was actual information that had sources and was based on research.
Yeah. All right, I think we're done, right?
I think we're
worked it
close.
through.
All right. So what is your takeaway? I'm a business. I'm I have a website. What's the takeaway? What's your takeaway? And then I'll give mine. That business is really
so the first thing is somebody in your organization needs to spend some time, if they haven't already, and I'm sure many have, but finding, generating a list of keywords, have an AI system do that are related to your product, service, or company, and then go and type those into the main search engines and see what is then resulting based on that. So you see what your ranking is in effect, but also then go deeper and provide some terms or even the reference to your company name, and say, tell me about this company, and see what Search Generative Experience or Perplexity or others actually present. And then if it's not getting exactly the harmony that you want between what your important brand messaging is and what is being shown there, think about ways, get your team that's doing the development to elevate those messages so that they actually appear there. That's the new SEO.
Nice. And I would say really, really look at your data, right? Look at your data in the context of what is the information that people are wanting to find, and how can you make that as accessible as possible to machine learning so that it's accessible as possible to humans. And the other piece is identify the places that are natural for your human-human interaction and experiment with leaning into that, right? So are there some free lunch and learn webinars you can do? Are there like some hackathons? Hackathons are a thing that happen in the tech world, but they don't have to be tech world. It's really like, come, let's play together with the thing. And the thing is often tech, but it does not have to be. Like, I think we're leaning further in to the opposite directions. How can you be more oriented to people, and how can you be more oriented to machines?
Interesting. Let's close with Jen's comment.
Excellent.
Put that up there. Thank you, Jen. This is on the subject of accessibility, right?
Yeah,
so
nice.
Today, it's for people with certain disabilities, it's very difficult to collect the information. Now, you can talk to your assistant, ask it to go and collect all the information from the website. It simplifies accessibility development, by the way, for in the not immediate future, but in the distant future, simplifies development and the ADA requirements for providing accessible websites for the companies who are, maintaining websites, because now the assistants You can even provide an assistant that will do navigation. I bet there's a company out there already that's providing this as an accessibility tool.
Yeah.
It's basically an assistant on the website that will help anybody with any type of disability. You just tell it what disability you have. I have a problem with these colorways and these contrast things. And so it's going to adjust the website in response to that if you're live, but more importantly, can also just go get the information, speak it to you.
And actually for businesses, that's a great opportunity too, because now not everyone is needing to make sure that that their website is friendly to the reader, that has the alt text for the stuff, that also has all this other information. The accessibility will be in your agent, in your digital assistant. All right. Thanks, everybody. Tomorrow is Wednesday, and we will be talking about the news, and some very cool stuff has happened. Here we go. Join us then.